I got the sneaking suspicion that we're not giving the people what they want.
Let's give the people what they want.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and let's talk about the ending of Joker, Folie. Deux. Now, this movie is not sitting well with some critics, and I think a lot of Joker fans are going to hate this ending. But I personally love it, and I think it is the perfect complement to all of the symbolism in the first film, and we're going to break it down for you right now. And a little later, I'm going to be joined by two of the very best to talk about this, Colton Ogburn and Matt Singer. Now, before I forget, though, we are currently selling tickets to our live show. Our first show is in Boston on November 14th, and you can find links for that and our Discord below. And we also have this sweet new Joker-inspired parody merch that I am so proud of. This one shows a sad office clown that says Mondays, and then we have t-shirts and hoodies with the I Have a Condition card from the first film on the front and ha 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 on the back. And finally, the Murray Franklin merch showing the blood splatters after Arthur did this.
Get what you deserve!
Guys, thank you much for supporting us. We love designing this merch for you. Now, let's get to explaining that ending. Now, a lot of people love the first Joker movie because it seemed to glorify the concept of mob rule. In that film, Arthur Fleck is a mentally ill man who longs to be seen by the people in his life, and he wants to be seen by society as a whole. He wants to be seen by power brokers like Thomas Wayne. And Arthur, in a way, gets what he wants. By the end of the film, he is being held up as a symbol by the angry masses. And this film then shows you the consequences of his new celebrity. So to really understand this movie, you have to keep one concept in mind. Harley Quinn is the villain. She is a spoiled rich kid, part of the same elite class that ignored Arthur in the first film. And as we go through this video, I'm going to explain exactly how she took advantage of Arthur's mental illness to make herself feel important. Harley, or Lee as she's called in this film, fell in love with a fictional TV version of Arthur. She saw him portrayed in a TV movie. Therefore, she never really knew or cared who the real Arthur was. She only cared about the persona of the Joker. Now, the Joker is a celebrity. The Joker is somebody who you can use as a cipher for all of your own inadequacies.
Yeah, she's like that lady in the song Common People.
Exactly. Think about this beautiful image of their first kiss. They kiss for the first time in front of a movie projector. Now, a movie projector essentially casts an illusion. It shines a light through a thin piece of celluloid to create the illusion of movement. But to Lee, this illusion is very real. Also, notice how this illusion is framed with a fire burning behind them. This is showing us the consequences of believing in this illusion, that eventually it will lead to violence and destruction. This is when she tells him that they are going to build a mountain, which, by the way, is a kick-ass Lady Gaga single for this film.
Yeah, what does build a mountain mean anyways? Explain, person.
Okay, I'll explain what build a mountain means, because this is actually a metaphor that explains Lee and Arthur's entire relationship, and it also explains the ending of the movie. First of all, you can't literally build a mountain. A mountain is slowly shaped by the earth over millions of years. So the very concept of building a mountain is, by its nature, insane. But you can build the illusion of a mountain. Now, a mountain is big and you can see it from everywhere. And like I said, all Arthur wanted in the first movie was to be seen. So Harley is essentially telling Arthur that they're going to build something together so big that people will be able to see them at all times. In other words, she is talking about fame. But in the same way, mountains are also something people aspire to. People want to climb to the peak of a mountain, just as people strive to be famous. But more importantly, people want to be close to fame. In the first film, Arthur was a bitter and lonely man who had no real human connection. So he invented human connection by creating a fantasy life where he was in a relationship with the woman in his building. He imagined that he was a guest on the Murray Franklin show. He imagined that he had a loving mother. But then Arthur's illusions about his own life extended to the entire world. Now people look at him and they either see a savior or a monster. And neither of these concepts is true. Arthur is just a guy. At one point, Lee says to him, "I see the real you." But this could not be further from the truth. She sees a persona that feels real to her. And I want to quickly dovetail to talk about how this movie correlates with my all-time favorite film, Network.
Person, I have a fashion to make.
You know, buddy, I've been waiting for you to say something, and it's okay. We already know about the diapers.
No, it's not that. I gotta fess up. I got no idea what you're talking about right now because I have never seen the Joker.
Wow, really? You've never seen Joker? But it's so good.
Yeah, but every time I try to watch it, it's not on any of these streaming services that I pay for. And it makes me so mad.
Oh yeah, I get that, man, 100%. I mean, you guys have probably felt that same frustration. You already subscribed to a dozen streaming services, but then the one thing you want to watch is not streaming on any of them, so you got to pay extra money. But here's the thing. That show or movie you're looking for probably is streaming on your service, but just not in the United States. Like, for instance, Joker is not on Netflix in America, but it is in Sweden. So use NordVPN to change your IP address to Sweden, and voila, you can watch Joker on Netflix. This is one of NordVPN's many features, and this is why I have been a loyal NordVPN customer for years. You can add up to 6 devices on your account, and you can use it on mobile, TV, or your desktop. And now NordVPN is offering an amazing deal through our link below, nordvpn.com/ScreenCrush. When you sign up now, you get a huge discount on a 2-year plan plus 4 additional bonus months for free. NordVPN also offers something called threat protection, which deletes shady downloads before they finish, and their ad blocker is so great that it's now the only ad blocker that I use. Again, save yourself some money, keep yourself protected, and help support our channel by clicking the link below to get a huge discount on a 2-year plan plus 4 additional bonus months for free at nordvpn.com/ScreenCrush. Now, back to Joker. Now, I mentioned how this movie correlates with the film Network. Now, that movie is most famous for this speech, where a mentally ill newscaster rants about the state of the world today.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!
So this inspires people to open their windows and repeat the phrase. Because they all interpret this to mean that Howard Beale is angry. But I think Paddy Chayefsky was actually saying that Howard Beale is insane, as in he has been driven mad as hell. Now we see the same thing in this film, with people embracing the persona of the Joker, the shadow that we saw in the opening animation, and they embrace him so they'll all feel better about their own empty lives. The Joker is someone that people can project onto, just as the movie is projected onto the screen in Arkham during the fire. This projection is also made literal when Lee visits Arthur in prison. When she places the smile on the glass, she invites him to place himself within that smile. In other words, she is asking him to fill this empty image of the Joker for her. And in this scene, she sings the song Close to You. The lyrics of that song are about how the entire world, the birds and the guys in town, gravitate toward one person who is the object of their desire. And this is the same way that the world is gravitating toward Arthur. The problem with believing in any famous person is that they're going to inevitably let you down. We tend to project certain things onto celebrities instead of just seeing them as regular people. So it's inevitable that Arthur would disappoint the people who think that he is this fictional person, the Joker. For instance, there's the prison guard Jackie. Now Jackie walks through the halls of the prison singing and whistling. He uses Arthur to give himself an opportunity to sing at a piano. You get the feeling that Jackie enjoys being near a famous inmate. So when Arthur insults Jackie on TV, the guard takes this personally. This leads to Jackie and the other prison guards completely dismantling this Joker persona by showing Arthur that the Joker cannot keep him safe. Now, I bring this up because this is exactly what the psychotic inmate does at the end of the movie. In Arthur's final day in courts, he admits that he planned to do a big show for the people, to give them what they wanted. As moviegoers, this is also what we're trained to expect. We think Arthur's going to say something crazy that will end up getting the jury's sympathy and let him be released, so then Joaquin Phoenix can go star in another film. But instead, Arthur just admits that he is not the Joker and that he cannot be this fictional person they want him to be. Now, this is a huge turnoff for Lee, and she abandons him immediately. When his guilty sentence is finally read out, he involuntarily laughs. Now, this is because emotionally, he is reaching a crescendo. Throughout the movie, the musical numbers are used to express characters' emotions when they can no longer be expressed through speech. And now, without the music of his Joker persona to use as an outlet, Arthur has to express himself through his uncontrollable laughter. And this laughter precedes a crescendo of violence. First, an assault by a member of the audience, and then with the car bomb that explodes outside. And when we see that explosion in the skyline, it creates a billow of smoke that looks like a mountain. So Harley was right. They did build a mountain together, but it's not a mountain that you can stand on. It's a mountain that's fleeting, a mountain of smoke, and a mountain of fame. Now, when he escapes, he sees people cosplaying as him. So this then externalizes this Joker persona. It's somebody he can look at. Just like the animated opening short film, Arthur is now being pursued and chased by his shadow. Except in the real world, his shadow is the idea of the Joker that people have latched onto. Now, this scene outside is heart-wrenching. It definitely brings to mind real-life imagery from 9/11 and the Oklahoma City bombings. So all of those events are caused by terrorists who felt that regular society had no value and it needed to be destroyed. And this is also similar to Arthur's followers. They are anarchists. They believe that the system has failed them and thus the system must be destroyed. Arthur ends up literally running away from this persona of the Joker in a scene that mirrors him running from the cops in the first film. Except now the positions have been reversed and he's no longer in that same same makeup. And to punctuate this point, he then repeats his exact same sad walk from the first film and then ends up on the stairs where he sees Lee. Now, the stairs aren't just a cool thing to meme. Early in the first film, they represent how hard it was for Arthur to live a normal life. And later in the film, they represent that he has given up trying to live a normal life and he was embracing his descent into madness. But in this film, he simply meets Lee on the steps and then they stand still together. She tells him, all we have is the fantasy and you gave up. We're not going anywhere. Afterwards, she climbs up the stairs as if she is ascending back up to the ivory tower of her privileged life, while the bottom of the stairs show flashing red sirens like the fires of hell beckoning Arthur downwards where he belongs. The movie ends with another inmate telling Arthur a joke, and the point of the joke is that a psychopath meets a clown, and when he sees that the clown is just a regular sad man, the psychopath is disappointed in him. And this all leads up to that fateful moment when he stabs Arthur with a shiv, in the exact same spot where Arthur imagined Harley shooting him in their variety show dream sequence. Remember, Arthur had that dream sequence when he found out that Harley was actually a rich girl from the Upper West Side. So, in this moment, we see that Arthur's soul is destroyed by the upper class, as symbolized by Harley Quinn, while his body is destroyed by the underclass, the psychopath. But the psychopath is actually a more literal embodiment of the Joker. You could even say that he is an evolutionary step forward for the Joker persona. We see him begin to cut the corners of his mouth into a Glaswegian smile, just like Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. So it is possible that in the future this guy could become the Joker to the Batman of young Bruce Wayne who we met in the first film. So then, as the light fades from Arthur's eyes, the psychopath is laughing uncontrollably, which is probably a nod to this scene in Batman '89. Now, I believe this entire movie is a commentary on the price of fame, and I can't help but think that Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix intended this to be a commentary on the first Joker film. They never thought it would be such a massive success, and I think they saw it be embraced by some pretty toxic people online, and then they're trying to reiterate with this film that Arthur Fleck is not somebody we should idolize. Now, I do want to get other people's thoughts on this ending and on the movie itself. So that's my thoughts on the ending, but I want to hear from two of the best people I know. We have Colton Ogburn, the guy who's stuck eternally in our television but doesn't know it, so please don't tell him, and ScreenCrush editor-in-chief Matt Singer. Now, Matt, just to let you guys know, did not really like the movie. His review's up on ScreenCrush.com right now. You can read it for yourselves. So I'm very eager to talk to you, Matt, and get your views on this. But first, Colton, what were your thoughts on this ending? You just heard my take. What did you think of it?
I loved the ending. And, I had read like on social media and stuff that people were not digging the ending. And I was like, God, what could it be that's so bad? I loved it. I thought it was so eerie that when you see the guy that shanked him start carving those like smile marks into his face, I love the idea from the original Joker and now in Folie Deux that Arthur Fleck is not the Joker. He inspired a movement. He created a societal condition where he lives in a broken world, and Arthur Fleck, I think, represents that broken world that creates a character like the Joker. So I really appreciated that ending. My headcanon is that the guy who kills the Waynes at the end of the first one and says, you get what you effing deserve. I love to think that maybe it's the same guy that ultimately kills Arthur, perhaps displeased with him not, embracing his Jokerness. So I know we'll get into the review here shortly, but as far as the ending goes, I thought it was great. I thought it paid homage to the original film, and it stuck with the theme that the Joker character doesn't have an origin story. So I love that they created it. They're still making it to where the guy that probably ultimately becomes the Joker, we still really don't know much about him. We just know really about the world that inspired the creation of a guy like the Joker.
Yeah, and I love that theory too. I don't think they'll ever continue this universe, but I do like the thought that like that was the guy who shot his parents, who we saw at the end there. I think that's really fun. I also thought this movie was like an attack on fans of the first movie because there were some pretty toxic fandoms that sprung up from this who like took literal inspiration from the riot at the end. So overall, I liked it. But Matt, I want to hear from you. What were your thoughts on this movie? What didn't work for you?
I mean, to be totally honest, even though I can't really recommend this movie overall, I probably prefer it to the original movie.
Really?
Believe it or not. I just, I don't know. I think that even though this movie isn't entirely successful, I found it to be a more interesting overall than the first movie. And partly for the reasons that you're talking about, and that the movie does seem, like the whole structure is that it is this trial for Arthur, that he's put on trial for the events of the first movie. And it really feels like Todd Phillips and his collaborators are almost putting themselves on trial, putting their movie on trial, maybe creating a trial for audiences in some ways. That he's kind of looking at this thing that he made that became wildly popular, and sort of trying to interrogate it and figure out why it was so popular, why people really responded to this character, and not. I mean, it's. I would say it's almost like a prosecution of the first movie, not necessarily a defense of it. And you even have the character of Lady Gaga, yes, kind of playing Harley Quinn, but I mean, the way that she's depicted, the way that she acts, the things she says, and then ultimately the way she costumes herself, the thing she reminded me of was much more like a cosplaying Joker fan. Even more than any specific version of Harley Quinn from the comics, who,
Absolutely.
at least to my knowledge, she does not really resemble any of those. What she really resembles is like a crazy fan of Joker who likes to dress up in costume. And, she's kind of the devil on his shoulder who's whispering in his ear.
She's the villain in the movie. Like
basically,
I said
yes. I mean, it's the kind of thing that you don't necessarily want to spoil for someone who hasn't seen it. I guess we're assuming everyone here has. And yeah, she's sort of the person who's, sticking, prodding him and saying, stop taking your medication. You are the Joker.
Yeah.
Everything you did was right. And she literally is a fan. She talks about having watched the TV movie that was based on what he did. Now, all of that stuff I think is interesting. And I am sort of fascinated by the fact that the movie really seems to be going out of its way to like displease people who like the first movie. I think all that is interesting. I just thought that the movie that they made just like itself, I don't know, there's something missing about it. It's very long, it's slow, it's dry. The musical numbers, which I am fully on board for a big, crazy musical laden movie, I thought were kind of underwhelming. A lot of them aren't that elaborate. They're not, it's sort of like the idea of, well, these people who are mentally unwell are escaping from their horrible existence into this fantasy. But most of the time, that's not even what happens. A lot of them singing is just them like sitting in a dingy room, like kind of whispering, singing to each other, which, I mean, it's fine. It's not bad necessarily. It's just, it doesn't really kind of go for it in the way that I really wanted the movie to. And it sort of like tiptoes up to the line of really saying something interesting to me, but not quite getting there. So, I mean, in some ways, I find this to be a more interesting movie than the original Joker. But I can't say that I found it to be entirely successful at the same time.
There's a lot of questions I have to follow up on that, but I guess the most important one would be, you seem to have this disconnect with the film. Did you care about any of the characters in it? Because fundamentally, I think every story depends on that. Did you relate or care about any of them?
I would say not especially. The character I found most interesting, I think, was the Lady Gaga character, was Harley Quinn, just because she's so clearly kind of placed into the movie as this figure that's kind of a meta commentary on the first movie and the reaction to it. And I did think she was, had an interesting rapport with Joaquin Phoenix. And it's Lady Gaga. She has, such a sensational voice and screen presence. And so when she's dressed in these period costumes and she's singing, like, I'm going to smile at that. I'm going to kind of go along with that. I liked her casting. I liked the conception of her character. And I thought she was really interesting. The problem there is that, like, she's really not that central to the movie. This is not like the Joker and Harley Quinn movie. It is not a two-hander. She, do we see a single scene of her life outside of her connection to Arthur? Not
no, because
especially not really.
It's like
there's maybe one or two scenes of her walking around, but
yeah, it's all supposed to be subjective from Arthur's point of view. You're right.
I suppose, and and she seems, especially in the beginning, she seems so kind of sketchy and incomplete as a person. You start to wonder, is she an invention of his mind? the way
Yes.
that the Zazie Beetz character was in the first movie. And you go, well, probably not. They wouldn't repeat the same gag a second time, I don't think. And they don't. But, you know, like I just felt like that character had a lot more they could have done with her. I wanted to, like, you know, we hear a little bit about her life, and, you know, she sort of tells him one story, and then it seems like all of it is a fiction that she's invented to manipulate him. And that's sort of interesting, but we don't get much more than that. And so I guess that was the character. I mean, I don't know if I cared about her, but I was certainly the most interested in her, and felt like I would have definitely been more interested in seeing more about that character. That's just not really in the movie.
Matt, do you think that this movie, basically being structured like a prosecution of the original film, do you think that takes away from the storytelling they potentially could have done in the film? Like, do you think that hindered it, and maybe one of the reasons why it didn't work for you?
I don't know. I mean, that's the story they chose to tell. I guess it's not so much that I already said, I thought that concept is an interesting idea. I mean, like, I certainly can't. Maybe you guys would disagree, but like, I can't say like, oh, this is an interesting courtroom drama, because it's not. You know, it doesn't really illuminate anything necessarily about the first movie that we didn't already know, even though it kind of dredges the film back up, brings back a lot of supporting characters who were in the first movie who aren't otherwise in this movie at all. They only appear sort of as, like, you know, character witnesses or witnesses for the prosecution, really. And, you know, like, again, like, a lot of it is Joaquin Phoenix doing like sort of very impressive work, I think, on a technical level for the reasons you said. But, like, is it all that compelling to see him, like, you know, for like an hour kind of rambling around the courtroom and doing accents and shtick? I mean, to me, at a certain point, I was like, well, what are we driving at here beyond that basic idea that I talked about? And, you know, I was kind of with, again, like I said, like, I sat there and I'm kind of like digging into what they're giving me here about the meta sort of textual aspect of this movie and going, well, this is kind of interesting. It's not just a rehash. And I respect that about it. And then at a certain point, I was like, well, they haven't really, like, taken it beyond that basic thing. I didn't really feel like there was much more to it, you know, and it just at a certain point, you know, like, the whole final act almost felt like they were like, well, we've kind of run out of things we can do here. Let's blow up the courtroom and have a elaborate oneer where Joaquin Phoenix, you know, runs through Gotham City, which is, I mean, again, technically impressive, but it's like, to what end? And so that was where I sort of felt like the movie kind of let me down. It's like, you know, like, when I say that, it almost seems like it's, you know, putting itself or its fans on trial. Like, I don't consider myself one of the fans of the first movie. So I'm absolutely willing to go along with that concept 100%. But I you know, I ultimately felt like, well, if I, you know, like, if I was a fan and I showed up, I don't know that I would necessarily even feel challenged by it. I have a feeling most people who were fans of the first movie who come to see this one are mostly going to just walk away bored, because it is like a whole series of people sitting in rooms talking and occasionally singing. You know, it's like shot on IMAX, but like, why? Like, to what end? Like, it's, you know, we saw it in sort of like, you know, faux multiplex IMAX, and you're getting a big image, but it's, you know, if anything, it makes a movie that could have been very claustrophobic feel a little less claustrophobic because the image is so large. And they, again, it's not like there are these so many wild, elaborate, beautiful musical numbers where you could say, okay, well, when the movie gets big, it gets really big. It never really does. So it's sort of halfway between those two things.
Well, see, I disagree, though. I think the first sequence, and right now I'm on the spot and I've had very little sleep, so I forget the song. But the first sequence with him and Lady Gaga singing to each other, where they go out in the rain and they're escaping, like, it's another oneer. I loved that sequence. I think they're still singing to That's Entertainment song. But anyways, I thought that, for me, that was by far the best number in it. And it was the one that was like halfway in reality, halfway in this weird musical reality they create for one another. And I also appreciated, I've seen a lot of negative press on these musical numbers. For once, it's the first time I've ever liked live singing in something. I like Joaquin Phoenix can sing. He sang in Walk the Line, but he was off key. Lady Gaga's character was off key, but in the sequences, especially in Build a Mountain, she sang not quite as good as Lady Gaga. I think she still kept the cap on, but I loved how they toyed with their reality. And in the press, the 48-page press brief they sent us, they said that the point of the movie is that Arthur has music in him. That's why he did the weird contortion, kind of waltz dances in the first film. What those musical numbers were for me was an interpretation of that, where we're seeing that music slowly seeping out. And I love the unreal. I love musicals too. Musicals have this unreal aspect to them. Is that person literally singing right now? Is this just an internal outburst of emotion? So for me, I thought they wrote that line beautifully. I agree they didn't get big and splashy, but I don't know that Arthur's musical numbers would be big and splashy. Colton, what are your thoughts on that?
But you just said, that I haven't read whatever press notes you got, that the whole point is that he's got this music in him and that it's coming out. And it's not like the whole movie is set inside Arkham. They do have these moments where they're on a rooftop or they're on a set that kind of looks like the Murray Franklin show. The number that you mentioned, that is, I think, one of the highlights of the movie. But how many minutes into a 2.5 hour movie is that? I don't know, 40 minutes. I didn't
know it was 2.5. That flew by for me. I thought it was under 2.
Oh, bless.
But again, I really liked it.
My child.
What about you? Where are you at on the? So go ahead.
I will.
We haven't let you talk in a while. Go ahead.
I will agree with Matt. It was a little long. Yeah, I personally I liked that it was shot on IMAX because I think it showed the spectacle of it all with the Joker movement and how Arthur is just this one guy who thought he felt like a nobody. By the way, speaking of that, I love the joke. Knock, who's there? Arthur Fleck, who that's what the whole movie and the previous movie were about. I liked how big the movie felt. So I personally like that it was shot in IMAX. As far as the trial of it all, you guys have been talking about the trial and the meta nature of it all. I think this movie was about Arthur Fleck versus the Joker. There were a lot of moments in the trial where Harvey Dent in the defense would make a point and it would cut to Arthur and he'd be like, oh, that was a good point.
Yeah.
And I think because he realizes, and he kind of says this in his final speech to the jury at the end, he does take responsibility for it. And to get into the folie Deux of it all, I think they really are two separate people. I think that Harley Quinn she is the embodiment of the Joker in this movie. I think more so than even Joaquin Phoenix, she is the Joker. In fact, I was half expecting for at the end it to be revealed that she was just in Arthur's mind. Like when she shows up in his cell and she's telling him not to take his medication, I was like, oh, he's imagining her. This is the Joker. It's Arthur versus Joker.
But then in hindsight, it's because she is rich, so she paid off the guards. Which I thought the same thing that Matt said earlier. Oh, it's like Zazie Beetz. He's imagining all this. And you get like, oh, no, I actually think she's really pregnant, too. I think that those are all things that literally happened. And Todd Phillips and company said the reason they added in all these interviews and recaps and they wanted everybody to understand what happened in the first movie was real. And they thought it was important that the audience understand what was and wasn't real, which, again, might take away from the experience of the first film. I don't know. I
just wanted to add that. And I love that at the end, it's the Joker that won because the Joker kills Arthur Fleck. The movement that he started kills Arthur Fleck. So I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, and all foreshadowed by that short film as well. We do have to wrap up soon, but I want to tell everybody, I don't know if any of you guys have read this. This is Matt Singer's book, Opposable Thumbs. He's not getting paid to say this. I could not put this book down. Definitely. It is an absolute page turner. If you're a movie fan, I cannot recommend this more. I love Siskel and Ebert as a kid. Matt watched hours and hours and hours of Siskel and Ebert and At the Movies and that. Is it At the Movies or And the Movies? I can never remember, but fantastic read. You can get it on where, Matt? Amazon and everywhere else in the world right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Anywhere books are sold.
Not just saying this because Matt's my friend. I absolutely love this book and he signed this copy for me. So, which I appreciate.
To the Joker. Love Matt.
Matt, you got any final thoughts here before we take off?
No, I just think, I'm enjoying the conversation, even though, we have, it seems like pretty different opinions about the movie. What I want to convey is that I do think that this is in a lot of ways a more interesting movie than the first film, at least for me. I just think also, you know, if someone goes, oh man, I loved Joker, and then they go, I'm going to see the sequel, I feel like a lot of those people, if they don't know too much more else about what they're going in for, are probably going to be pretty confused, bewildered, and maybe disappointed. And I'm not necessarily saying that as an insult. In some ways, I'm saying that as a compliment. I'm just sort of more saying it as a statement of fact. In fact, I was talking to someone like yesterday morning. I mentioned I was going to see it, and they were like, oh, I really enjoyed the first movie. I'm going to see it tomorrow. I'm going to see it what now is last night. And I said, well, let me know what you think. And so this person who loved the first movie, self-avowed fan of Joker, told me, like, I've never felt more bored in a movie and checked my watch more in a movie.
Oh, I fully believe it. I think a lot of people who like the first one will not like this film.
And so I guess maybe if this is a spoilery conversation, that's besides the point of saying. But I find that very interesting because it doesn't feel accidental to me. It all feels very deliberate. It feels like they set out to antagonize their fan base. Now, the question of why is one we don't have time to get into here as we're wrapping up. But I just think that's a really interesting thing to do with a sequel. Maybe it's not the most financially advisable, and it may not have been the most creatively successful in this particular case. But I find myself begrudgingly respecting a lot of what this movie was doing, even if I can't say I really, quote unquote, enjoyed it in the end.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. I think that this movie, I like to think of it, that scene in the Marvels where they went to the musical planet for like one number, which I enjoyed. I thought it was fun. I think the Marvels had its good points. It's like fun moments. But I think about that scene, then I think about this movie and how great it is to see filmmakers take this source material and then just take the time to take a big swing, to take a risk, to do something weird and different, because these kind of movies are so oversaturated at this point. It's nice to finally just see somebody go, no, let's see what we can get away with. And so I really appreciated that about this movie. Again, Colton, Matt, we got to wrap up or else the video will be an hour long. Colton Ogburn, you can see him here on the channel talking Joker all the time. Matt Singer, Opposable Thumbs, read his review on ScreenCrush.com right now. And just a reminder, everybody, to get a huge discount on a 2-year plan plus 4 bonus months for free, click our link below to go to NordVPN.com/ScreenCrush. So let us know what you thought of all this down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.